What's poppin' and welcome back to a brand new video. It is mid-April, no not really, it's beginning of April 2022. It snowed in Sweden today because you know you have no clue apparently when it's winter, when it's not winter here, but that's what it's like in the north. Oh well, we just have to deal with it. One of my very good friends, or a few of my very good friends actually mentioned that they don't really know what I'm putting in the app, or that what kind of content I'm gonna have, or what kind of stories that I'm gonna have, etc. So I thought maybe YouTube doesn't know either. And if YouTube doesn't know, then why am I documenting this whole thing if I'm not knowing for myself in the future, or for anyone who happens to watch this? Because apparently people want to watch this. I just hit 10,000 views before making this video, which is quite sick, and people are commenting and all that, so it's like really fun to see that people are interested to some degree. But enough blabbling and wrestling dancing away. I thought, okay, why not take then a couple of minutes, a short video, or short talking videos. If you don't like those kinds of videos, then hop away right now, because this is gonna be one of those. And now what we're gonna do, we're not really gonna explain the app, how it works and all that, blah blah blah, but we're gonna look into the actual stories and the actual sagas that we have. So, let's start off with some of the categories that we have. So we have fiction, sport, adventure, drama, another adventure, silly, comedy, mystery, educational, classic, spooky, all those kinds of stuff. Let's take sport for example. That one was empty. I think it's called sports. Let's take adventure for example. The pumpkin house, okay. So, I think we have 110 stories in total. I think 40 of those, and now this is rough estimate, I think it's like maybe plus or minus 5. 40 of those are originals, so stories that I've paid ghostwriters to write. These are stories that, for example, I've found someone on Fiverr who's an author that they seem to have good portfolio. I paid them a little bit, or in some cases, a lot of bits. A lot of bit. I don't know if you can say that. And then they write a story, and then I pay a voice actor to voice the saga for me, and then I upload it to the database. So, if we look at WonderSagas as the author, we have quite a few. Yeah, around 40, and we have quite a big degree of variation in terms of the stories that we have. You know, some are like very kid-friendly, others are a bit more serious, like for example The Cheat or My Sport, for example. That's a very non-fictional one about a kid who has to choose which sport that he's gonna do. Let's listen to that one. Let's give it a little bit of listen. So we have this nice loading screen while it just buffers. I think my Wi-Fi is not super fast today for some reason. My calls have been breaking down a bit too. But let's listen to this one quickly.
My Sport. Lucas's parents promised him that he could play one sport during the year outside of the ones offered by his school. Lucas was going to have to decide which sport was the one that he wanted to play.
So this is like a non-fiction story about a kid who has to pick his sport, and then
it was a hard fun with the twins. Lucas talked to some of his friends to see what sport or sports.
And then it's just a story about, you know, like any kid can kind of see themselves in this situation, like going through, you know, speaking to your friends, etc., what sport you're gonna do. And then all the stories have this kind of the tag, and then they have a little description. So if we press sport, we have a couple of sports sagas, not that many. But let's head back to the category page, or the author page, sorry. And I think we had like 4 or 5 different authors who have helped out writing this, and I think 4 different voice actors. So there is quite some variation amongst these, and they vary quite a lot. For example, then we have a history one. This is one also non-fiction one, and this is kind of like a history lesson. So you don't really only as a kid have to go to like listen to an imaginary story, but there's also learning to some degree, where you can learn about like historical events. You can learn about ice hockey. There's some value to these stories as well.
Egypt. Emma's mother was a travel writer. Mostly, she wrote about places that she had seen.
This voice actor is so good, by the way. Like, her tone is just so like enthusiastic and so happy, and it just gets you really into the story when you're listening to this whole thing. But educational also, for example. We have quite a few educational stories, like if you want to learn about what it's like to raise chickens, then there's an instruction for how to raise chickens in case you're a kid and you want to raise chickens one day, you know. It can always be good to know. The Canadian Project, which is like a story about Canada, that was actually written by a very good Canadian author. She ghostwrited like I think 40 of the stories, no not 40, like 20 of the stories that we have, so a lot of work from her. Sport of ice hockey, etc. Horseback riding, and then we have for example animals, so we have quite a few animal stories as well. We have the Puss in Boots, which is one classic one. We have Little Birds and a Snake, which is also an original. Let's listen to that one quickly.
Little Birds and the Snake. There lived 3 little birds in a tree of a jungle.
This one's like, she's got that like mystic tone, kind of. You wonder, oh, what's going on, what's gonna happen next. Really good as well. Bobby the Bear and the Honey, another animal story, for example. And then there's quite a few of these tags that like kind of recurring. For example, friendship is quite common because a lot of the stories are about friendships between animals or between humans. Since that's like a good, I read about this when I did research, that's like a good moral part or something good to have in a story. A lot of the famous stories actually have some element of friendship inside of them. So that's some of the original WonderSagas or original stories that we have, quite a few actually. So I'm really happy about that, and it's like these stories, we own all the rights to them, we can use all the audio, etc. So those are like 100% ours and they're original, no one's gonna have heard of them anywhere. Then in addition to this we have some classics as well. So yeah, we can take the category that says classics. Here we have a lot of stories that you're gonna recognize. Hansel and Gretel, for example. And this is quite a long one. Like the ones that are ghostwritten, they're like 4 to 10 minutes maybe. This one's 18 minutes.
Hansel and Gretel. Hard by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel. Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up and
really good stuff. So that's, for example, that's someone quite famous, Grimm brothers. They're very famous authors. They've written a lot of your like favorite or a lot of your classics or even Disney inspired stories, for example. Ashputtel they've written. Rapunzel is also one of those stories, that one we have as well. And then if we go back to classics, we also have some other classic authors, like for example Hans Christian Andersen, who's a Danish author. Not that many, but some very famous stories he has, like the Emperor's New Clothes. We have that story. Little Match Girl, quite a sad one, quite a dark one. And actually here I wrote this little warning. Warning, this story contains serious depiction of death, despair, and may not be suitable for all children. This is kind of like a little bit of a dilemma that I had when picking these stories, because a lot of these old school stories, they're very, like you can hear by the name, they're very old school. So for example, the way that they depict like princesses and princes is like not really up to the, the 21st century view of women, for example, which is, I was debating, should I put this in the app or should I not put this in the app? But I think it's good for 2 reasons. First of all, it is stories, it's fictional stories, and second of all, it's part of culture, like this is heritage. Even if it was from 150 years ago, this is what the world used to look like once upon a time. And I think that censoring it to some degree is even worse than actually showing it. And I think as long as parents take this into consideration, and as long as parents are aware of this and are able to talk and explain, obviously monitor their children so they don't grow up viewing men and women as they did 150 years ago, then I don't think it should be a problem. I think this should be part of culture, part of heritage. And for example, to some degree, kids need to hear about what stories were like back in the day. And also because all of the Disney movies that we have today that has been, appropriated to some degree, this was invented by these authors way back in the day. But yeah, so I struggled with that a bit, like should I put this, and I've left some of the stories out, like the ones that contain blatant racism, for example. I've left those kinds of old stories out, even if they're classics. And I've kept some of the ones which are like, they're still good, they're still really classic, but some of them have like iffy-biffy, view on women, for example. But yeah, that what I just explained, that was my reasoning for still leaving these stories in. Little Red Riding Hood, a lot of these classics. And then we have Joseph Jacobs, who's also done a lot of classic stories. So it's Grimm brothers, Andersen, and then Joseph Jacobs, who's done a lot of them. And Grimm brothers, they've done the vast majority of the old school sagas that were put in this app. And then Joseph Jacobs and Andersen have done quite a few. But here it is like the story of the 3 little pigs. Everyone's heard this story. Let's give it a listen.
The story of the 3 pigs. Once upon a time, when pigs spoke rhyme and monkeys chewed tobacco.
When monkeys chewed tobacco, those were the days. For example, and here we also have moral lessons to some degree. We can press moral, and then we can listen to the moral stories where there's like some a moral lesson to some degree. Now my Sunday League football team is texting me because they don't know that I'm recording a video, I'm recording my screen. So I apologize for that, and I apologize on their behalf for their blatant ignorance of my private life. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so that's pretty much the collection of stories that we have. And as you can see, if I scroll down this list, there's a lot of stories. Like I said, we had 110 stories to begin with. So 110 stories, the average one is like 7 minutes. So 770 minutes of stories we have in the app. I'm not sure how many hours that is, but that's like a lot of bedtime stories. So we definitely have enough to start and definitely have enough to launch the app. That's not an issue. I think we're waiting on a couple of more stories as we come along. But right now we have a pretty good base, and we have some nice thumbnails as well. I'm really happy with the content of the app. Yeah, so I think we're providing quite a good overview. We have our classic stories written by 3 different authors. We have our ghostwritten stories, and they're about all kinds of things. We have like 5 or so different voice actors. We actually have one guy, A Journey to the Past. I really like this one. I thought this story was so good. Some people didn't like this guy's voice acting. I thought it was really good. He had this like calming voice.
Hello, my name is Sion, and I'm a scientist. And I would love to talk to you about my most recent invention.
Yeah, so that was the only voice actor that we didn't show. I'm not sure, this was probably a really messy video. Probably, you know, no one's still watching this. If you are, thank you. But this was a quick overview of the stories that we have in the app and why we've decided to leave some classic stories inside, why we've chosen to leave some out, etc. But I think this is a quick overview, and also, you know, a split between the stories that were owned and the stories that we have used because they're in public domain, etc. With that said, I will stop recording my screen, I will slam my phone on the table, and I will say that from now I'm gonna start, I just did this quick update video, and now we're gonna continue coding on the app. We're gonna have the payment module, and we have the audio, which is what needs to be done next. So I think today is Wednesday. Because for these larger tasks that I know are gonna take like 6 hours, I don't really like doing those on the weekdays, because if I start, I spend 30 minutes, you know, making a plan, then I have an hour to do it, and then I don't manage to finish it, so I gotta come back another day, and I don't really know where I left off. So I think it's so much better to just do the bulk in one go. That's why I like to save these big tasks for the weekend, like the payment module and the audio view, for example. So I'm definitely gonna do that on Saturday, and I will definitely be recording that as well. But it was just a quick overview of what we put in the app so far. I hope you're liking it, and if you wanna see what this turns into, you know, if you wanna follow the series, then please leave a like down below and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified when we upload these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.